Today, let's talk about low-cost, essential hiking gear. Stay tuned. Now, for many years, there's been this list of 10 essential hiking gear items. So what I'm going to look at today is going to be partially that, but some other things that I think are essential or have come in very handy on a lot of my hiking trips. Now, of course, you're going to need the right food. You're going to need the right clothing. You're going to need a backpack. You're going to need water. And, there's a few things here that I'm not going to mention today, but just know that those are, of course, for me. Take a look at those 10 essentials. They're down below in a link. Now, nature can toss a lot of things at you, so you want to be ready. Some of this stuff is really for like emergency preparedness kind of stuff when you're out in the wilderness, out in nature, out hiking. Your environment and the type of hike you're doing is going to dictate a lot of what you bring. Here's a few ideas. Now, most time when I'm hiking, I bring things that will prepare me for a 24-hour period. Just in case I have to stay overnight, I don't have to worry about whether I'm going to survive or not. I'll have at least the minimum essential stuff with me to keep me alive. Now, most of the things I'll mention here are under $30, but really spend as much or as little as you can afford, as your budget will allow. Now, I like to buy once theory, which means that you buy it once and you never have to buy it again. And that usually means it's a little bit more expensive, but it's not necessarily expensive. Look for things that are durable, that are going to last for your intended purpose. The bottom line is having something, whether it's durable or not, is better than having nothing at all. Okay, let's get to it. The first thing on my list is shelter. You should bring some sort of temporary shelter. The very minimum thing you could bring is an emergency blanket. And this will keep you warm. It'll keep you out of the elements. They even make emergency bivvies that are, I think, a little bit better than this in terms of shelter system. But this is very small, compact, easy to carry. If you want to get a little bit bigger and a little bit more involved, you can buy a tarp. This is a 10 by 10 tarp, and you can put this on all kinds of configurations. You could survive in this thing for a long time. If you can carry this thing, it isn't really heavy. It's about 2 pounds. It's a 3 meter by 3 meter or a 10 by 10. It's a 210T polyester, so it's pretty durable and it's pretty waterproof. It comes with 6 guideline ropes and 6 stakes. And there's 19 attachment points in this thing, so all kinds of configurations you can do with this. And I'll do some demonstrations about this later on in the year, but I wanted to point out that, this is the king right here in shelters, emergency shelters. You don't have to get them that big. You can get a small 5x7. I've even used a ground cloth for one of my tents. It was big enough for us for an emergency. So just be creative. Think about what you might use to protect you from the elements while you're out there. The next thing on my list is a fire starter. Bring something that can help you make a fire. It could be as simple as a lighter, a little dollar lighter. What do they cost nowadays? I also have this little fire kit. I want to show you what's inside of it. This is a little bit elaborate, but it gives you more options. Waterproof matches. Now, these come in little waterproof containers. They have like little cotton balls on the top, and they have waterproof matches here. Pretty nice. They don't cost much, and they're very compact. This is a little bit bigger one. It holds more matches. It has a little striker on the side, but the same concept. It has matches inside. It also has fire starter material in the top, little cotton balls. I think I might have laced these with petroleum jelly. So that's another option. If you're a little more crafty, you can bring a flint and steel. This is a little magnesium strip right here. And here's a little steel rod, or a little flint rod, and here's my little steel. And I think I've used this in some other videos that I've shown before. Go check it out. Also in your kit, you might want to bring some petroleum cotton balls. And I have a video on that. I'm from the Great White North, and so I have birch bark in here. You can also take whatever fire starting materials that you like and just pack it in a little bag. A little waterproof bag is always helpful. But it's a little bit more elaborate. You don't have to get all that fancy. If you have a lighter, you're probably covered. Now, I've had to build a fire a few times. It wasn't really an emergency, but it could have been. I had really cold feet. My shoes and socks were drenched, and it was very cold, and it was going to get below freezing that night, and I didn't have anything to protect my toes. So I built a fire, and I dried out my socks and my shoes. I've had to do that several times. So it comes in really handy to have something to start a fire. Now, if you watch some of my other videos, you know that I'm not a big first aid kit kind of guy, because I figure I'm not going to be able to do a lot of self first aid on me anyway, and I have an emergency device to call if I'm really in trouble. But I bring along a few things, and you'll see them in some of my other videos, but essentially it's this tiny little bag here. And what I have in here are Band-Aids, so I have some gauze, tape, I have some adhesive strips in case I have a laceration that might require stitches. I can use this temporarily to hold things together. And the other thing I have in here are these triple antibiotic ointments pads. Now, if you have raw honey, it's even more effective than that. Well, that's all I have for my first aid kit. And if you don't want to make your own first aid kit, you can always buy pre-made ones that have everything that you're going to need. I'll put a link for that below. Little story about a first aid kit. I was hiking the Colorado Trail, and this lady had some awful blisters. And I saw her soaking her feet in the creek. She didn't have any bandages or anything. Well, she had to walk another about 20 miles or so to get to Breckenridge. And when she got there, you should have saw these. They're awful. They were oozing all kinds of nasty.
That's gross.
She had to go to get emergency care for her feet, and she wasn't going to be hiking or even walking with shoes on for weeks because these things were awful, bad, and they can cause some pretty nasty infections. So bring something to make sure at least that you're covering blisters. Next is water treatment. So when you're out there in the wild, there's all kinds of nasty stuff that can be in the water. And I've talked about that on other videos, so I won't go into details here. But typically what I bring is a simple Sawyer squeeze. So you can spend the money on that. And of course you will need what's called a dirty bag with this. And I have my CNOC bag with this. This a 2-liter. There also has a kit with this. I don't think it works very well. That's why I take my CNOC, but up to you. Another super inexpensive option if you don't want to carry a water filter is to buy these aqua tabs. These are just water purification tablets. There's a special treatment that you have to do. It's not like you can drop them in a drink. Drop them in, shake it up. I think they have to set for a while, for a period, and then it's safe to drink. It doesn't do anything for filtering. It just kills bacteria and some viruses and some nasty stuff in the water, just to make sure that in an emergency you have something that's not going to make you sick. Okay, the next couple things I think are really simple. 50 foot of cord. This is just really like 3 something millimeters, really small cord. It has a high tensile strength. You can bring, paracord, whatever you like, but about 50 feet of this. This comes in really handy. If you're setting up a tarp, this could be your guideline. This could be your tie outs. Lots of different kinds of repairs you can do with this, like to your backpack, or you can do shoelaces with this if you need to. So there's about 1,000 different uses for just this little piece of cord. Take 50 foot of it just in case. Next is a knife. Now, typically I don't carry a big knife unless I'm doing some bushcrafting stuff. If I'm just out on a hike, this little Swiss Army knife is all I ever take usually. And it has a knife in it. It has a file, a little screwdriver. It has little scissors. Here's the scissors. Here's a knife. It's just a little knife. There's a little screwdriver tip on there, but there's a file also. This one comes with a little toothpick. Comes real handy for me. Tweezers, in case you get a splinter. These tweezers come in really handy. You know, those splinters can be really annoying and kind of painful. So having this little thing is really handy, and it's really all you need. It weighs like an ounce or something. Put it in your pocket, good to go. Another thing I'm going to add to this list, essential might be a stretch, but it comes in handy for a million applications, just like that little cord, a bandana. And bandana can be used to wrap around your head. It can be used as a scarf to keep your neck warm. It can be used as a wound compression or dressing for a wound. It can be used to filter really dirty water. There's a lot of particulates in the water. This can filter out the big pieces. This can be used as an arm sling. It can be used as a carry bag. There's just, in fact, I think there's a website out there that has like 50 uses, a crazy amount of uses for a simple bandana. So I always take one. If nothing else, I'm blowing my nose with it. And I carry a flashlight. Mine is really dinky, but there's all kinds of settings on it. You know, I paid a crazy amount of money for this little thing. You can go buy really cheap ones for like $10. But carry some sort of light source in case you get caught out there late and you need to find your way back, or it can be used as a signal to let someone know where you're at. Flashlights, really handy. And I typically carry a whistle. Some backpacks actually have a whistle on a chest strap. That's really handy. This one is supposed to be the loudest whistle in the world, as it was advertised. I don't know. It can be used as an emergency call device. 3 blasts with this to let someone know that you're in danger. These things are much louder than your voice, and your voice will eventually give out. These things, they'll last forever, and they're super loud. I was on a hike one time, and there was some guys shooting off their guns. See, it seemed like it was in the gully right next to me, or it was really close. It just sounded really loud. So I blew my whistle once, and they kept shooting. So I blasted it 3 times, and they stopped shooting, and they were nowhere to be found when I got down there. So they took the hint. This might have saved my life that day, but really handy. Navigation, I think, is an essential. First of all, you should be studying the trails before you go. You should be familiar with the terrains, where all the gullies are, where the big hills are, where the creeks are, where the landmarks are. Be very familiar with those before you leave on any trip. And while you're on the trip, you should carry things with you. You should carry some kind of navigation with you. You should carry maps and a compass, and be sure to know how to use it. Or bring a GPS on your phone. Or you can bring a GPS unit with you. I have my Garmin. Bring some sort of navigation with you. Study the trails. Know what you're getting into. And when you're out there, use your navigation to make sure you're always on trail. Short little story. I was in the Indian Peaks wilderness area recently, and I was going down this trail that was not a real frequented trail. And there was 4 people coming towards me, and they had no idea where they were at. They were trying to follow this trail. It was very faint, and they weren't hikers, so they weren't used to really how to find a trail and how to track. They didn't have any navigation with them. They had no idea how far the trail was. Nothing. And so I gave them some tips on. First of all, I said, you should probably just go back. You can follow me if you want. They didn't like that idea, so they just wanted to go forward. I said, okay, well, there's markings on the trees. Keep looking for those. Keep following those, and hopefully you make it. I was waiting for them to be in the newspaper, but I didn't see anything. I guess they did okay. So we're all about carrying our electronics these days, right? Your phone, actually, could be used as a flashlight as well. I didn't mention that earlier, But these phones, we're using them for more and more things. I use them for navigation. I use them sometimes as a communicator if I have signal. Um, uh, I use this. I keep my books in here, so I read at night. I have all kinds of uses for this thing out on the trail. Um, your flashlight, if that's rechargeable, your GPS unit. We are becoming more and more dependent on these electronics, which means we need to have our devices charged. I always bring my Anchor with me. This is an Anchor 10,000, and I have a ZMI 20,000. I also have, solar panels if I'm going to be in a place that has that I'll be able to use them. But I at least take this. It'll charge my phone at least a couple times. It'll keep all my devices. I can at least do one full charge on every single device that I carry with me. In an emergency, you need your electronics, so carry that with you. So the last thing is not a piece of gear necessarily. It is a reminder to have you notify someone about your itinerary before you leave. So pencil and paper, there's your gear. You're going to want to let them know what days you plan on being in certain places, how long your trip is going to be, when you plan to be back, anything in your itinerary where they would need to know in an emergency where and how to find you. Write those things down. And also, I use my little GPS device to let my wife know where I'm at all the time, and that comes in real handy too. So and you can also send messages. So if your itinerary changes, you can send that off to them. I showed you the thing before. It's really handy. Then make a mini version of this thing. And I'll have the links to everything that I mentioned here today. I'll have all the links below so that you can go make sure you're geared up, make sure that you're prepared for your next hiking trip.